Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we will have two guests. In the first hour, we'll have Jos Sobran of the Sobran newsletter. Also, in the second hour, we'll have Denny Morisseau, a congressional candidate in Vermont, who's running on the platform of impeaching George Bush and Cheney. Well, King George II, this past Tuesday morning, he signed a law. He signed a bill into law. Basically, what this bill, ladies and gentlemen, will do, it has taken a lot of our freedoms and a lot of our rights. Right now, the government does not need to charge you with anything except say that you are an enemy combatant. And that's it. They will pick you up, throw you somewhere, and no one can do anything about it. They don't have to charge you with anything. Well, what he said is, with the bill I'm about to sign, the men our intelligence officials believe orchestrated the murder of nearly 3,000 innocent people will face justice. Now, the question is, we did not and we were not capable of bringing justice to those who perpetrated the atrocities of 9/11. We had to have a military law so we can bring them to justice. What have we been doing for the last 5 years? Haven't we been trying to bring them into justice? Is our justice system incapable of dealing with criminals, with those criminals who perpetrated the events of 9/11? In June, ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court has ruled that detainees in the military tribunals violated United States laws and international laws. Trying detainees in these tribunals violated the United States law, international law. So the Supreme Court said you cannot do it. That was a defeat for the Bush administration. So what the Bush administration did, it went to Congress and got a law passed. Basically, now they can do whatever they want and no one can touch them. Basically, right now, ladies and gentlemen, anyone that they will claim to be enemy combatant, it could be United States citizens, they will try them in a military court. You cannot, if they arrest you, you cannot go to civil court. You cannot sue anyone, even if you are innocent. And even if you are innocent and you are accused by a military commission, you cannot go to a civil court and appeal the decision of a military commission. So basically what they're saying is, civil courts, Supreme Court, stay out of our way. We're going to do whatever the heck we're going to do with these people that we are arresting. And the thing is, so far, I have not seen anyone being tried for 9/11. Ask yourself the question, don't we have a justice system that can handle this? But right now, civil courts will not be allowed to even hear any of these problems or cases. And if in case that the military commissions find you guilty and you want to appeal it, or you don't like it, or whatever, civil courts cannot interfere on your behalf. Period. Well, this law, ladies and gentlemen, was passed while we were busy with Mark Foley. The same week that the media 24 hours was bringing you the Mark Foley story, at the same time this law went into effect. It was passed in Congress. And that's exactly what happened. We were busy with that. Mark Foley's problem, or Mark Foley's story, was more important than one of the most important laws in the United States, which is due process of the law. That's what we lost. We became exactly like a military regime, like the Soviet Union during the communist regime. That's exactly what we have become. Well, you can see that those who voted for the law, it was mainly Republicans. Some Democrats did cross over, some, very few, not much. The majority of Democrats opposed the law. The majority of Democrats opposed the law. Right here in Louisiana, our Congressman Melanson and William Jefferson, they voted against it, while everyone else voted for it. Of course, Charles Bustani voted for it, because all he's been doing lately is just be rubber stamping everything that the administration is bringing out. Okay, there was a poll by the Zogby International last week. It was commissioned by the Council for the National Interest Foundation. Shows that a significant number of Americans are wary of the power of the Israel lobby and believe it is behind the invasion of Iraq and the current belligerent tone of the White House and Congress towards Iran. The poll, which was carried out by Zogby International, reveals that 39% of American public agree or somewhat agree that the work of the Israel lobby on Congress and the Bush administration has been a key factor for going to war in Iraq and now confronting Iran. However, similar number, 40%, strongly disagree or somewhat disagree. So the country is split. But ladies and gentlemen, when we first went to Iraq, it was about 89% of you thought it was the right thing to do because that's what you believed in. Now half of the country believe that, you know what, we went in there not for the reasons that they told us, but for a different reason, and Israel has a lot to do with it. This is what you think. After the study of Mersheimer and Watt, the Israel lobby papers, it really brought out a lot of the things that we have been talking about here for years. That it is becoming, when we first started talking about this 4 years ago, most of you did not even know what the heck AIPAC was, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. You did not know what it was. Now there's a lot of people who know what it was and what it does. So anyhow, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going in the first hour, we'll be speaking with Jos Sobran. And we will be discussing, of course, we will take your phone calls. We will be discussing with Joe. Joe is an excellent writer, has a lot of followers on the internet. And we'll be talking about Islam and Christianity. We'll be talking about Islam in the West and how the West look at Islam. I met Joe a couple of months ago at a conference in Washington, D.C., where he spoke. He was the keynote speaker. And he happened to mention a few things about Islam that later on, actually, he decided to say, you know what, I was wrong. And I really appreciate that and respect him for it. Because it does take a strong man to actually say that, you know what, I was wrong. Do we have Joe with us?
Yes. Hesham, I'm here.
Joe, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me? Hello?
Okay, I can't hear him back here.
Hello?
Okay. I can't
Can you
hear him
me
here.
now?
Okay. Joe, you probably can hear me, but I can't hear you. They're working on it. And just let me know. You might want to keep talking so we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. Very well.
Good.
Very well. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here, Hesham, even though I'm here in shame.
No, you're not. Not at all.
Oh, no, I am ashamed of what I said because it was bigoted. It just was. But on the other hand, that makes me a good subject because so often people call each other bigots, but I'm calling myself one. I can discuss bigotry from the inside, so to speak. And I can explain how I got that way and how I got over it.
Well, let's start with that.
Okay, well, you know, I grew up in an atmosphere in this country where, well, it was bigoted. Not in an entirely malicious way, but you know how bigotry is. You hear things all the time. You see things in the movies. You hear things in the media. And, you know, you would think Arab terrorist was all one word. But there was never any other kind of terrorist. And that was the image that I grew up with, really. You know, fanatical Muslims and so on. Did you ever see the movie Khartoum?
No.
Well, there was a wonderful piece of acting by Laurence Olivier as the Mahdi, who fought against General Gordon in the Sudan in the late 19th century.
Yes, I'm familiar with Mahdi, yes.
Yeah, he was terrifying. Brilliant acting, but, you know, just acting. Anyway, that was the kind of image we had. And I heard a lot of things about Islam, and I didn't bother to check them. I just thought since I was hearing them all the time, they must be sort of true, right? Because there's usually a lot of truth in stereotypes. And then after a few Muslims very gently rebuked me for what I'd said, I looked into it a bit more, and I realized it was kind of an optical illusion. You could make anyone look bad that way. If you just concentrate on a few points from history and the headlines and so on, you can, you know, blacken anyone's name. It's been done to Christianity, too. It's still being done in this country. Like Christopher Hitchens, who both supports the war and hates Christianity and Islam. He hates all religion. Mm-hmm. You know, he's very good at plucking out the few facts that seem to support his side of the case and then ignoring everything else. And, well, that's what I was doing, I realized. And I tried to stop doing it. I'm probably far from perfect, but, you know, at least I think I'm heading in the right direction. I must say, even at my worst, I was always against this war. I thought, what's all this talk about militant Islam? It reminds me of the saying of the French have a saying, this is a vicious beast. When you attack him, he defends himself. Well, who attacked whom? Did the Muslims come over here and attack the U.S.? No, not until the West had been, you know, bringing violence to the Muslim world for ages. And, you know, I could understand, even on 9/11, I understood this was not something that was unprovoked.
What are your thoughts about 9/11?
Well, they're a bit mixed up. But, I mean, basically, I think, yes, there are a few Muslim extremists. There are plenty of Christian extremists, too. And that's what you're seeing. I think most of the support for Israel comes not from Jews, who tend to be pretty moderate about it in a sense, but from the evangelical Christians, like this Hagee. You know, I watched him the other day. He's a powerful preacher, but my gosh, he just stacks all the facts. So, you know, with kind of diabolical simplicity.
Yes, John Hagee.
Yeah, I don't know how you say his name, but anyway, he can bring an audience to its feet. Of course, they believe him in the first place. I think he would be much more uncompromising than the Israeli government would.
I agree.
So we have a lot of people like that. And, you just have to try to keep your mind clear of that influence, which is not easy.
Now, tell me what is the most profound thing that basically made you say, you know what, I need to take a look into this. This does not seem to be what I'm reading here, and made you look further into it and basically change your mind about what you knew?
Well, a man came up to me after that speech I gave and asked for my source. He said, where in the Quran is that? I couldn't tell him. I'd read it in a book about the Quran, not the Quran itself. So I thought, well, I better check on this, and that way I can at least give a citation next time. Well, it wasn't in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've got several translations of the Quran because, of course, I don't speak Arabic. No American ever speaks a foreign language, so it's unpatriotic, Anyway, I've done a lot more reading, and I just realized I've got to be a lot more careful about what I say.
Okay.
Even in translation, you can see there are many ways of taking certain things.
Right, and as a matter of fact, the problem is people take out one sentence or two words
right
out of context, and they think, okay, this is what Islam says.
Right. Yeah.
Now, you in your article, Bad Muslims, you mentioned in the Quran, Muhammad, as far as I can see, seldom says anything that can be reasonably construed as enjoining violence against unbelievers. Do you think Muhammad wrote the Quran? Is that why you're saying Muhammad did not say?
Well, I don't find anything in the Quran that says, that urges violence on unbelievers.
Yeah. No, my point is, when you said Muhammad, as far as I can see, seldom says in the Quran. Now, you do know Muhammad could not read or write.
Yeah.
And he could not have written this Quran that he taught to his people.
Yes. Well, I was looking for evidence to back up what I'd been hearing and saying for so long, and I couldn't find it.
Okay. Also, you looked at women in Islam, and you think the way they're dressed with the veil, that's a sign of oppression?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that. I know there are more and more women in Islam who are starting to think that way. Probably westernized women and so on, but I just don't have a right to shoot my mouth off about these things.
Okay.
That's what I was doing. You were there. I shot my mouth off. Now I'm shooting it off against myself.
That's all right. That's the only way we learn, is if we dialogue and if we talk.
Right.
Unfortunately, we can't sit with every American on one-to-one basis to explain Islam. Islam is being taught to the American public from or by a media that has an agenda against Islam.
Right. That's true. And that's what I grew up with. I was very pro-Israel when I was growing up. And if you're an American like me, ordinary Christian American, you probably grow up knowing a number of Jews and hardly any Muslims.
Right.
So you're likely to have a ready sympathy for the Israelis, but not for the Arabs or the Muslims.
Right.
So
Joe, what do you think of the news that came out of Florida about Mark Foley? Now they're trying to say that he was, as a young boy, that he was molested by a priest. Do you read anything in this? Are they trying to get Mark off of the hook and say, oh, poor thing, he was a victim? Or is this another attack by the media on traditional Christianity?
Oh, I think they're probably... Well, a priest admitted it was true. As far as that's what I heard today.
No, the priest did not. The priest did not admit it was true. He admitted that they used to go in a swimming pool or a sauna or something, but nothing have happened. That they were friends.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that. I haven't followed that case too closely.
Okay,
I feel a bit sorry.
But I mean, let's assume for all intents and purposes, let's assume that it was true, which is, the priest himself today said no, it was not true, nothing happened, that they used to go into this whirlpool or sauna or whatever as friends, but for them bringing this up, I mean, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to say that Mark Foley was a victim?
I don't really know, because people's motives are so inscrutable. And, I have a saying, Hesham, a normal person is just somebody you don't know very well yet.
True.
When you get to know people, they turn out to be a lot more weird than you would suspect.
True. Now, Joe, if I would ask you, okay, let's dialogue and really figure out how we can turn these things around as far as like the Muslims are concerned. What would you say would be the main thing that you would like to know about Muslims, or something that you're confused about? Is there anything that you're confused about Muslims?
Well, I'm sure there are many things I need to know yet, because every week I find what an ignoramus I was last week. It's been my general experience. But I think a lot of it is just we should learn to hold our fire in general. You know that there's a great saying by an Anglican bishop, Richard Whately. He who is unaware of his ignorance will be only misled by his knowledge. Whenever you learn a fact, just remember that's only the tiny tip of a very great iceberg. And you're not, education is never ending, and you just have to get to know the thing pretty thoroughly before you can speak with any authority about it.
Okay. Tell you what, Joe, we're going to go to the phones. We have Mark on line 2. Go ahead, Mark.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. When I was at the conference in Washington a few months ago, from what I've been told, I made something of a name for myself for ruining the festivities by saying some things that I felt that needed to be said. And so, with that in mind, unfortunately, I'm going to have to do it again, Hesham, on your show.
What are you going to do, Mark?
With your permission.
Well, no, Joe is my guest, so you can't just be respectful.
Oh, of course I'll be respectful, yes. But I think that we need to put some things in perspective. And by the way, Mr. Sobran, I, like you, am a traditional Catholic as well. And I'm not here to toot my own horn. However, I think that there are some things that my fellow Christians, and in particular my fellow Catholics, whether they are Novus Ordo Catholics or traditional Catholics, that they need to take stock of. When September 11th happened, I knew that what I was being told by our Jewish-run media was a lie. I didn't know anything about Islam, but I said, I know one thing for sure, which is I can't believe anything that the media is telling me. So it took me all of about 15 minutes to find out that all of these things that I was being told about the Muslims and about the religion of Islam was not true. Okay? Now, unfortunately, I say that fortunately, you had this turnaround, okay? But this is 600,000 Iraqi people that have been killed later, okay? And I'm not singling you out in this, by the way. I'm singling out everybody in the Christian world who is still under this delusion that the Muslims are X, Y, and Z, as we have been told that they are by our Jewish media. 600,000 Iraqis. And a lot of this has been done because of the cooperation that the Christian world has given the Zionists by buying into this lie that Islam is a religion of violence and all of the other things that we have been told. Now, I, for one, am glad and grateful that Mr. Sobran has been big enough of a man to come forward and to admit that he was wrong about these things. But we need to make sure that this thing sets deeply in people's minds. We need to understand the gravity of what has taken place here. Incalculable suffering, and it hasn't even begun yet. And it would not have been possible were it not for the fact that the Christian world allowed itself, just as Mr. Sobran allowed himself, to be duped by our Jewish enemies.
Okay, Mark, let's go ahead and wrap it up.
Go ahead, and I'll listen to his response.
No, I mean, do you have do you have a particular question?
Nope, that was it.
Just a comment. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I could barely hear. I heard the figure 600,000, which I guess is from the Lancet study of how many Iraqis have been died violently since the war started.
Correct.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to make of that. It sounds awfully high. On the other hand, we're not getting straight figures from the administration either, so I don't know what. I just know that, all this is the result of American intervention in the Middle East in the first place. And I don't see I can't think of any justification for any of that ever. Here I always say we have natural defenses here. We have two oceans. Let's use them. We're not going. It reminds me a bit of how Americans were also taught that the sneaky Japs started World War II with Pearl Harbor, and we never heard about all Franklin Roosevelt's efforts to provoke war with the Japanese, for example, by cutting off their oil supplies. Now, all historians know this, but it still hasn't sunk in. The average American still thinks that the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor for no reason on December 7th, 1941, and that's when the trouble started. The trouble always starts long before you think it started. That's one thing I've learned.
Joe, let me ask you this. How many Americans do you think Muslims have killed?
Oh, maybe, I guess 3,000.
Okay, now, I guess you're referring to the 3,000 who died on September 11th.
Yes, well, a few others now, too. I mean, all right, say 6,000 if you
okay,
throw
now,
in the Iraq
if we
war.
assume, if we assume that September 11 was caused by Muslims, then it is 3,000. Of course, the jury's still out on that one. I don't know why we can't have an independent inquiry or an investigation to tell us who really did 9/11 and why. But let's assume that they killed 3,000, and you said about 6,000.
Well, if you count the Americans killed, American invaders killed in Iraq.
Okay, so.
But let's not forget all the Iraqis who were killed by the sanctions and bombings.
Well, that's my point. My point is how many, if we want to call this Christianity against Islam, which the United States represent Christianity, I think Christianity killed a lot more Muslims than Muslims ever dream of killing Christians.
Yes.
And now, why are we looking at us? And now, if the MIT study is correct, and 650,000 Iraqis died, and not counting the 500,000 children who died before the war because of the sanctions that we have forced upon Iraq, then we are looking at about maybe close to 1.5 million that has been killed, or that have been killed by either directly or indirectly by the Americans, which is a Christian nation. And
absolutely.
If the Muslims killed supposedly 6,000, and we call them vicious, and we call them extremists, and we call them dangerous, and we call them all this, that doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, gosh. No. We call them all terrorists. Anyone that gets in our way is a terrorist. You know, even people killing invaders are called terrorists. That's what really amazes me. That this twisting of language has gone this far. And we just equate even self-defense with terrorism now.
Exactly. Now, I want to go back...
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I want to go back to... I'll tell you what, we're going to let's catch a phone call, and then I'm going to come back and talk about Islam a little bit more. We have Amigo on line one. Go ahead, Amigo.
Islam a little bit more.
Go ahead, Amigo. Are you there?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, Doc. How you doing?
All right.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, I can't really hear you. Pipe up, please.
Yes, I'm watching CBS News today, and John McCain, Senator John McCain of Arizona came, was interviewed by Katie Kerr, and this guy here just appalls me. Am I just assuming this, but it wasn't about a year and a half ago he opposed Bush tactics on Iraq and what have you, and wanting to bring the troops back home. This guy said today with Katie Kerr in the interview, we need more troops over there. Now, this is a senator saying this, former POW, you know, saying this. They need, if we if we take the troops out of there, it's going to be a disaster for the Middle East, you know, which is, what is the Middle East, okay? And the United States. And this is a former POW talking like that, okay? Hey, let me remind him. I wish I could talk to this guy. What did we do in Vietnam? We left. Was there a disaster? Was our country invaded? You know? Well, I'm listening to this, and my conception of what I got out of there, hey, the Zionist, this guy wants to run for president, which he did not. He's trying to say, well, he told Katie Kerr, we'll see after the November election, you know, because he was asked that and all that stuff, you know, see how the outcome going to be. And they done got him. They done bought him. They done bought him, Doc.
It's clear. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. Joe, what do you think would happen if we pull the troops back? I mean, can we just do that? Say, sorry, we messed up, and come home?
Well, I don't know, because here we have Fred Barnes of the Weekly Standard writing a couple of years ago, said the American invasion of Iraq was the greatest act of benevolence one country had ever done for another. That's almost verbatim. Now they say if we pull out, however, that would be the worst thing we could do to them. So, you know, when we invade, it's benevolent, and when we leave, it's malicious. Come on, guys, get your story straight here. You know, this is what I mean. You know, we get these self-contradictory opinions on all this. There's a very good article on the neocons, by the way, in the current London Review of Books, which I urge you to read, by Stephen Holmes. It's a review of Francis Fukuyama's new book, explaining his break with the neocons. And it's very interesting. And he focuses on these self-contradictions of these people. Who will say one thing one moment and another thing the next. They say that 9/11 occurred because the Muslim extremists hate freedom, and then they'll say that the reason that these people are angry is because they don't get any freedom at home. Figure that out.
Well, I mean, you know, when you can't understand something, then something is definitely wrong, and it could be not the real reason why we went to war, which of course it turned out to be, because the freedom that we were afraid of them hating, we are destroying it. I'm sure you heard about the law that George Bush just signed Tuesday morning, which basically circumventing the the Constitution. You know, right now they can pick up any American citizen. They don't even have to charge him with anything, and they can, if they do charge him, they can try him in a military court, and he cannot even appeal it to a civil court. It's like, you know, saying that our justice system is not good enough to try people who are accused of terrorism and otherwise. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, you know, I'd like to add something to what you were saying a while ago. It's not just the rights of the accused I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the rights of the public. We should want to get the actual evildoers, and we should want a process that will make sure we got the right ones. I mean, it's bad for us if we're convicting innocent people. We want to have a process that gets the truth. So, you know, although I do favor the rights of the accused, there are also other things to think of here, too.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, if you have these people tried by the military, so you're going to have the prosecutor, the judge, the defense, they all the same entity.
Yes.
So you kind of strip the accused of his rights, and also the public of their right to know, the truth. Because, you know, in a military commission and a military court, normally things can get twisted around, especially that these commissions will be commissioned directly by the Secretary of Defense or whomever he appoints in his place. So basically you have the military trying, you know, like I said, the prosecutor, the defense, and the judge, all of the same entity.
Right. The government always says it's protecting us.
Right.
And we are entitled to say to it, well, you better prove it. Prove that you got the guy who really did it.
Right. Do you want, let's go back.
Your assurance that you knew what you were doing.
Let's go back to the phones with Jeffrey. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, this is it. Yes, that's my first time calling.
Yes.
And I really don't know you that well. I know Brother Freedom called you on your program, and I know you get valuable information. And the person that you have on the line, on your program, Joe, whatever his name is, is accurate. First of all, if they talk about us, you know, hit and run and whatever in Iraq, look what happened when Ronald Reagan, when they killed the 300 some odd Marines in the Gaza Strip. They took off. Then they figure, well...
Wait. No 300 Marines got killed in the Gaza Strip. Are you talking about 1982?
The bombing.
In Beirut?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, Beirut.
Not the whole area being Palestinian area.
No, Beirut is in Lebanon.
Okay, but that's the area I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's the area I'm talking about.
Okay.
When we pulled out there, then they saw that was a weakness for us. But then they went to Guyana. I want to say Guyana, just to make up for his mistake.
Okay.
And it's the same thing Bush is doing, but Bush do not want to do this because of the fact that it'll make him just as stupid and like Ronald Reagan. And if there's a program that they're going to air tonight, and more likely you probably have seen it, called Democracy Now!
Right. Yeah,
and
we're
it comes on
familiar
tonight with a part 2 of it, which is from 11 to 12, midnight tonight. But
Okay.
it'll continue on to 1 o'clock. And this particular one says Iraq for sale. And
Right.
you can look at that. Your listening audience can listen and look at that. They'll be outraged, and I can't understand why the United States. I don't understand why the people in Lafayette is not walking on Lafayette Street in
because
front of the federal building
Jeffrey, Jeffrey, because most of the people in the United States, they don't see programs like this. They don't read. They don't go on the internet and try to educate themselves of what's going on in the world. They just rely on CNN and Fox, and CNN and Fox does nothing but give them lies, and that's basically the agenda of the government. That's why you don't see people on the street. You know, once it starts hurting them personally, they will be on the streets, but I'm afraid that time it will be way too late to even go out on the streets. Appreciate it, Jeffrey. Thanks.
And I appreciate you listening to me, man. And also, when you look at the percentage of those individuals that took 5 years to realize how George Bush is punking us.
Right.
I hope we can do something about it. I'm willing to fight. Love you, my friend.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Well, we just want people to go out there and speak to their neighbors. That's the only way we can. We don't have the millions of dollars and billions of dollars to be on nationwide. Joe, what are you hearing from people out there? Is the word getting out? I mean, are people becoming more and more familiar with what's going on in the war, or are they still ignorant?
Well, I think by now the impression is overwhelming. Let me inject an optimistic note here. You know, there have been many people who supported the war at first and then changed their minds. I can't name anybody who opposed the war at first and have come to believe in it. All the motion is in the same direction. Book after book is now exposed, and these books are getting a lot of publicity, has now exposed the cynical, arrogant, incompetent attitudes and practices of the administration in getting us into the war. I forgot to say mendacious as well. We were told that there's one phrase that all the administration spokesmen used over and over again, the biggest lie of all: no doubt. There was no doubt that Saddam Hussein was trying to get weapons of mass destruction, or that he had them. There was no doubt that there had been contacts between him and Al-Qaeda. There was no doubt this, no doubt that, and no doubt the other thing. There was plenty of doubt. And we know that now. And we know the people who said there was no doubt had plenty of doubt, or plenty of cause for doubt. So, time and again, we were hearing this, and they sounded so sure. And that was the only real assurance we had, if you can call it assurance, that they had no doubt. If they were so sure, why would they say this? Okay. Remember Condi Rice, the mushroom cloud lady?
Right.
We don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud?
Right.
I mean, ridiculous. And these are supposed, it's embarrassing. If my next door neighbor had said a thing like that, I would have just shrugged and said, well, he's nuts.
Okay. Joe, we're going to go back to the phones with Freedom on line one. Go ahead, Freedom.
Yes. May I ask Mr. Sobran a question?
Sure.
Look, today there seems to be a lot of buzz in the media and on the internet that some former Saddam Hussein generals out there in Iraq is planning a coup. Who would be behind the coup, since Prime Minister Maliki has met with Ahmadinejad of Iran? Is it possible that the CIA is planning a coup of the Iraqi government in order to keep Iran from controlling the government in case the United States would leave someday? Who is planning that coup, Mr. Sobran? And thanks very much.
Joe?
I couldn't hear.
Oh. You can't hear the callers?
No. Just, now and then I pick up a phrase. What was his question?
Okay. His question was, he thinks there was some old Saddam generals who were talking about a coup against the current Iraqi government, and he was wondering if the CIA could be behind this coup to keep Iran, because there is a talk out there that Iran and the current Iraqi government are close because they're both Shiite, and the caller was wondering if you think the CIA might have something to do with this coup.
Well, I just don't know, and that's probably the answer I should give a lot more often than I do. I wouldn't put anything past the CIA, but I just don't know. It's like this figure of 655,000 dead. I don't know how you validate or refute that. I'm not in a position to say.
Yeah, well, the thing is, this figure was, it was through MIT, which is a very respectable institute.
Yeah, and the Lancet is not exactly a radical Islamic journal, is it?
I'm sorry?
The British medical journal, The Lancet?
No, the ones who actually did the study is a group out of MIT.
Yeah, well, there again, yeah.
Yeah, it may have been reported in the British Medical Journal, but...
Right. That's
but
right.
the ones who actually did the study is MIT, right here in the States.
Yeah, why would they want to discredit themselves by not telling the truth?
Well, because, I mean, if the world knows that we killed 650,000 to go and free, supposedly we're saying we are there to free the Iraqi, this is called Iraqi freedom after all, and the world figures out that we killed 650, I don't know what kind of freedom are we bringing those people? Freedom of from living. That's the only freedom that I can see is kill them and they'll be free dead.
Well, remember the story of that little boy, I think his name was Ali Abbas? An American rocket hit his home and killed both his parents, 6 of his siblings, and burned off both of his arms.
Yes, yes.
Well, lucky for him, now he can vote. All he has to do is hold a pencil in his teeth.
Big deal.
Yeah. He's free now. We've liberated him, haven't we? Well, I think we've liberated a lot of people that way. And I've had enough myself. I didn't want this war in the first place, but now that it's happened, it's worse than I could have predicted. Worse. Much, much worse.
Okay. Joe, there's some things that you wrote, and I just want to see, maybe we can talk about this and see where and why did you feel this way. You said, consider the status of women in Islam, they are subordinate to men. And then you're talking about the veil, and you said it gives no support to the horrifying practice, which is women wearing the veil. Let's just be frank with each other here. When you say in Islam the women are subordinate to men, what made you think that?
Well, all over the world, I don't consider that scandalous or insulting, because all over the world, women are subordinate to men, even in this country. I mean, that's just nature for you. So I don't consider that a black mark against Islam. I wouldn't call it a horrifying practice. I'm surprised I'd ever say anything that goofy.
No, you talked about the veil as being a horrifying practice. Now, let me just maybe you'll start looking at the veil in a different way. Imagine, see, all the veil is to be modest and for women not to show, and you know what, Christianity calls for the same thing too.
Yes.
If you remember, not long ago, women, before they left their homes, they used to cover their heads. Back in the 50s, the 20s, whatever. But you know what? With this, the way that Muslim women dress is basically saying, take me for who I am, not for the way I look. Imagine if you have 5 or 6 women working in your office, and each one of them, one is wearing mini skirts, and the other wearing tight jeans, and the other low cut. Just think about how much work you will end up doing, and how much respect you will have. But when you look at a woman and all you can see is that person, because what she is wearing is not revealing anything, and it's making her your equal, I think you will be looking at her in a completely different way. And that's that's what Islam, the way the dress of Muslim women, that's basically saying, we are your equal. If you're going to hire me for a job, hire me for who I am and what I can do, not how short my skirt is. Now, what's wrong with that?
Nothing. I couldn't agree with you more, because in this, look, if our grandparents in this country could come back to life now, they would be shocked at what this country has turned into. It used to be that American women would, dress so much more modestly than they do now. And they had more dignity. They had more respect. And, okay, not so many of them were hired to teach mathematics at Harvard. We know that. But nevertheless, it was not regarded as oppression to regard the two sexes as very different, and to think that a woman's flesh should not be unduly exposed. Now look, my gosh, I can barely open the newspaper. Why isn't this considered sexual harassment, by the way? When these constant appeals are made to masculine lust all the time in advertising. It's regarded as harmless. Look at our sitcom. I mean, this country has gone so bad, and we've done it to ourselves. It wasn't because Muslims invaded and corrupted our culture. You know, I mean, this is something that's endemic and indigenous in the West, to use a couple of big words. I mean...
Joe, what do you think? Last week we had some statistics came out that married people are less than half. They're 49% of the household, the total household in the United States. Does this alarm you in any way that where are we headed when we have half of households not having a, like a two-parent,
right.
In a household? I don't know if it makes really much difference as far as like economy, but I mean, what about the way the country has been going? Do you think has anything to do with it?
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes, Hesham, the norm when I was a child was a household with both parents. And even if one of them had been married before, it was still normal for there to be two married people in charge of the house. That was just how it was. It was the way, and we assumed it would always be that way. We couldn't have imagined what this country has turned into.
So can we say that marriage is basically what saves countries, and if we weaken this institution of marriage, then we are weakening the country?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's beyond dispute. It's one of those facts you can ignore it or applaud it or whatever you want, but don't deny it.
Okay. Joe, just have time to say thank you, sir, for coming on the program. It has been a pleasure.
Hesham, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good night.
Okay. Have a good night.
Good night. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we don't mean to offend anyone out there, but this is reality of what's going on. This is the reality of the society that we live in 2006. And, I wanted to get Joe on the program because Joe is an excellent speaker and he's an excellent writer. And please go ahead and put his website on very quick if you can. I don't remember seeing it on the screen. He does write about a lot of social issues and political issues. He has a lot of experience in journalism and in writing. You will like his writing, as a matter of fact. But what I love about him is even after all this, he is able and he's willing to say, you know what, show me another way and I will go along with you. And definitely he did. Now, he did do some writings about Islam that I wanted to talk to him about, but apparently I felt that he really did not want to talk about that. It's like something of the past because I wanted, one of them is the way the veil is. He has taken it as a sign of oppression. As a matter of fact, a lot of people out there who might think that Muslim women are oppressed, but the fact is this is a traditional. This is the way the religion says that women should be dressed up as modest, and so they will not be taken for the way they look, but actually for who they are and what they can do in a society as mothers, as sisters. And any society will not be strong if mothers are weak. We'll be back in about 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, with Denny Moruso. It will be an excellent and exciting interview in the next hour. We'll be back 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Kimberly